The morning of 9/11, my wife Judy and I were in New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, as a matter of fact. My dad, unfortunately, was in the hospital dying, and we had gone out there to see him. And at 7 in the morning, we were in his hospital room, and I was sitting on the floor next to his bed. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the nurses were gathered around the TV out by the nurses' station. And of course, at 7 o'clock in New Mexico, it was 9 o'clock in New York, and the first plane had hit the towers just before 9 o'clock. And then eventually, of course, the second plane did. So we turned on the TV in my dad's room. We turned the sound down because we didn't want him to hear it. New York is our hometown. He grew up there. And we never told him about what had happened. But it was a devastating experience, even at that distance. And we were supposed to fly back to Baltimore, but they shut down all air travel. So we had to wait a day or two extra. And then finally we did get back home. Interestingly, while I was sitting on the floor, I got an email from a friend in Albany, New York, because she didn't know I was in New Mexico, and she knew that the Pentagon had been hit, and asked if we were okay, because living in Baltimore, we weren't that far away. Shortly after that day, I had a clinical conference in New York City, which was an annual conference that an organization that I belonged to had. They didn't cancel the conference, so I went. And ironically, in the room where the speaker was, there was a painting on the wall of the Twin Towers. Since I was there, I decided to go down to the area where the World Trade Center was, just to see what I could see. This was 9 days after it happened. So I took the subway down, and there was a lot of water in the subway because of all the water that had been used at the scene of the devastation. And I walked around the area. It was raining, and I saw a lot of police and military people, piles of buckets that they were using to put things in that they found, the twisted steel from the building, eye washing stations for people who needed that. They had cell phone antennas in a cherry picker, because the ones on the building had been destroyed. So I had about as close up an experience with that as one could have had at that time. One final thing about that experience was I was editor of a professional journal at the time, and we were about to publish an issue about sexuality and cancer. It was the Journal of Sex Education and Therapy. And since the issue was about to come out, I wrote an editorial for that issue. And I talked about how, just like with cancer, it can have a devastating effect. We always need to make adjustments in life, but hopefully we carry on and value the life that we have and the people around us, and we survive, and life goes on. I think what affected me most at the scene was actually seeing what I could see of the two buildings, the twisted steel frames there, and also the buckets. I mean, just piles and piles of buckets, and you knew what they were being used for, with over 2,000 people having died. It was a very emotional experience, and a very lonely one too. There were, as always, when you're in New York, there were people all around, but I wasn't talking to anybody. I was by myself, just with my thoughts. Yeah, on the anniversaries of 9/11, there really hasn't been anything special that I have done that I can remember right now. There's no pattern. I think this year is a little bit different because it's the 20th anniversary. And I had recently put the pictures that I took on a website, And so that brought back a lot of memories. I don't remember what prompted me to do that. And then the editorial, I had totally forgotten that I had written it. And I was doing a search on the University of Florida Library website, looking myself up to see what I could see, just to test a new search engine they had there. And all of a sudden this editorial popped up, September 11th, 2001. So I downloaded it and read it, and it all came back. I had totally forgotten that I even wrote that.